Hi, thanks for joining me for a Gossip and a Guinness. I'm Juliana, and today I'm interviewing fellow TV writer, showrunner, EP, DJ Boyd. We have a great conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I'm really excited to have you here as like an old-time friend on the podcast, and that's kind of a bit of the mission statement, is just to interview and talk to people who I'm already mates with, basically. So that's why it's a Gossip and a Guinness. I've got my Guinness here.
Is that what's
And
in
I
the
have
Guinness? Oh, that's something on the outside of the cup. Okay.
this is like a Kentucky Derby cup,
Oh, okay.
and it's filled with Guinness. And it's funny because I couldn't figure out how to open the bottle because I had this like a opener that was different than what I'm used to. And I was like, oh, this is all gonna come crashing down around my feet.
Well, you know that guy who does the Derby, the guy in all the fancy outfits, Johnny, can't remember his name. He's on Traitors this season. Him and
Really?
Tara Lipinski are both on Traitors that just started last week. I watched that with
So
one of
this
my
must be
kids.
the American one, not the
Yes,
British
I
one.
forgot there's a it's weird because it's
Mm.
the American one, but they shoot it in Scotland, so whatever.
Oh, do they use the same castle?
They use a castle. The host is, why can't I remember his name? Alan Cumming is the host. I don't know who the
Yeah, I
host of the
like him.
British one is.
I've watched a few seasons of the British Traders, and I thought it was excellent and so refreshing, and it kind of reminded me of like reality shows that I used to really enjoy, like Survivor, like early Survivor. I was a
Yeah.
huge fan of, but I haven't given the American one a try, so I'm
Well, the
gonna
American
put
one
that
is all
down on my list.
celebrities too. It's all reality celebrities and an
Mm.
occasional actor sprinkled in. Like this season, Michael Rappaport's on it for some reason, just randomly. Everyone else is like a Real Housewife, an ex-Survivor winner, Big Brother contestant, and Michael Rappaport.
But do you like that aspect that it's celebrities and pseudo-celebrities? Or
It
what I liked
changes
about
it because then they're not just thinking about winning the game, they're also thinking about how their image going forward. So it adds another element to it. I don't know that but I haven't seen the version where it's just normal people. So I would have to watch that to compare it against it.
Yeah, because that's why I liked it so much, because it was just normal people kind of who seem not media savvy. And that's what I miss about early Survivor, is you have just human beings who say terrible and stupid things, and you're like, it doesn't have this like meta aspect of an awareness of your persona
Yes. Yeah, that's
if
interesting.
you're not a media trained person. So, but I would like to see who they have on there. I think that's
Well,
really
now
fun.
I want to watch the British one to see what it's like with normal people playing it, so we can swap trader stories once we watch the different
Do you have
seasons.
time for that? I somehow doubt that you do, but yeah,
Well,
let's do it.
a lot of times I watch TV with my kids when I have my kids. So I have them on every Thursday through Sunday, and so my 14-year-old likes Traitors for whatever reason, and then they both kind of like Amazing Race. I love Amazing Race, so we will watch that, and then I'll force them to watch a movie now and then. I tell them it's good for their attention span, which is true. All these
I think
kids
that's
just
true.
watching their TikToks. Honestly,
God.
YouTube Shorts is so much worse than TikTok. It's all
So much
such
worse.
brains. I mean, daughter's younger than them, but you're probably dealing
Yeah,
with
she's
similar
11.
things.
Yeah, so the girls in the class in my daughter's school, all convinced the moms to get CapCut, because that's just video editing so that they
Yep.
could make their own dances and stuff. But what I discovered is that it also has scrolling, so they scroll through CapCuts. So it's basically just like a second tier runoff of Instagram. And she's exposed to all this stuff. So then I was like, okay, new rule, you could only make a CapCut in front of me. You know, like no scrolling CapCut, because
Yeah,
you
my
can
kids
see
were
it has
exposed to things they hadn't seen before on CapCut also, because they were like, oh, well, it's just to edit stuff. And then I was like, wait a minute, what is this? What is this? What?
I know. It's alarming. I never thought, like growing up, I don't know how your parents were about you, like watching TV and movies, but I always felt like my family was kind of, lax about it, but I would go to people's houses and they weren't allowed to watch movies, or they weren't allowed to watch TV. And it's so funny to hear you say, like, we're watching a movie to extend your attention span.
I know.
This is the stage that we're at.
Yes. Yes.
Are you guys watching like Citizen Kane, or what kind of movies do the boys like?
I have watched black and white movies with them before to try and make sure that it's palatable to them, because I know adults who, if you didn't grow up watching it, I have more sympathy for that now, because I can look at it from an outsider perspective and be like, okay, we do forgive a lot of the staginess of old movies if we were raised on them or just love movies.
Yes.
But if you haven't been exposed to it and you're 30 and it's the first time you've watched It Happened One Night or something, it's going to be like, you're just going to notice all the things that are stagey, all the things that are like beginning of movies. Whereas if you grow up with it, then you're used to those things and you just ignore them. It's just like, oh, well, that's just because it's an old movie. It's still good, right? So I understand that perspective more than I used to. But yeah, I've watched old movies with them, but I don't force it on them anymore. I mean, there's so many, now that they're teenagers and can watch R-rated movies,
Oh my
there's
gosh, yeah.
so many. Like, I took them to the theater to watch Heat, which is my favorite movie. So I took
Yeah,
them to
yeah,
the
great one.
Vista, and that was awesome to see. I'll see it on the big screen anytime, and getting to take them for the first
Yeah.
time to see my favorite movie. And they paid attention the entire almost 3 hours. And they said it was pretty good, which from them is an amazing review.
That's hilarious. Have they watched any of your stuff, by the way?
They liked SWAT, especially my 15-year-old did. But they haven't watched The Madness past the pilot, and they haven't watched Justified. But I could probably get them to watch Justified now. I mean, that's got guns in it. They're teenage boys, guns and
Yeah.
explosions,
Right. But it's more innocent. I feel like even things made 5 years ago, 10 years ago somehow feels more innocent to me than things nowadays. I don't know if it's just like the improvement in graphics and VFX and just where we've taken things. But when you watch old TV, you also have that feeling of how quaint. I mean, when I was growing up, I watched like Magnum PI and stuff like that during the summer. I think I watched all of Nick at Night and like Columbo and all of just like the most garbage television that you could imagine. But I think it's really good. It has like informed my taste to a certain extent. Oh no,
I mean,
lost my mic.
there is a lot of art to some of those shows. I mean, there's lesser ones, like The A-Team is really only fun for kids, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
Like
true.
Magnum it's a little better than I remembered. Rockford Files, some of those shows there is, and Felicity, we're going to the 90s now. I watched the pilot of Felicity the other day. I probably said this to you because it was like the other month. And I was like, oh, this is such a well-made TV show. This is so they know exactly what they're doing. And it's like, I don't know, it's so hard to fight past the notes in the streaming age. And I think someone pointed out, it was Wendy Calhoun, who I worked with on Justified, and I was on a panel with her in Austin, and she was pointing out that she thinks of streaming as different than TV. It's a different thing. It's like, whether they say it or not, most of the streamers are acknowledging the second screen viewing experience. So they want more exposition. They assume you're looking down and missed things. And they also want a vibe. It's like they want every episode of these 8 episodes to feel the same, like a bath or something. But that goes so much against what I want to do in TV, where you're like, oh, remember the one where blank. Remember the one where blank. I want each episode to feel cool and distinct and of the same series, but they don't have to all feel like, there's some shows, and I don't want to name networks or shows, but there are some shows I watch on streaming, and having gotten notes from streamers before, I know that this is on purpose, where even the wardrobes are bland. They're all very bland, very like monotone. It's like, okay, nothing that stimulates the imagination or can make anyone uncomfortable. It's just on. Just a screensaver. Like, what can we do that looks like a screensaver so no one is made to feel feelings that make them uncomfortable? And like, it sucks, but that also is like, people do watch that stuff, but I think whether they know it or not, there is a thirst for something that does make them think. Anyway, I'm getting way past myself. You haven't asked me anything yet. I'm just like pontificating.
But I'm loving this conversation. I think this is fascinating because I haven't been in those meetings where I've learned about the fact that there's this like new beast emerging that is about ambient experience.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all kind of do that, like in our own way. Like maybe you put on the same show again and again when you are writing or doing something where you want it just in the background as like a comfort show. But the idea of creating something new to do that rather than going back to an old favorite is kind of mind-blowing to me. My comfort show was always Buffy. I loved Buffy in the 90s. It's just such an amazing series. And I've had the pleasure of meeting some writers who wrote on it. And I mean, I think that that's for me like the beginning of my golden age of television, I would say. And the narratives told like in that series, I think about them still. Like I'll be falling asleep and thinking about an arc from season 6, for instance, that was challenging. Even if you go on the Reddits, like kids are discovering this show today and are as in love with it as I was in like 2003. I guess it was like late 90s, early 2000s, Buffy.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you watch Buffy as well, by the
Yeah,
way?
that's one of my favorites. Like, I think
Really? Oh,
X-Files is probably my favorite, but
me
Buffy
too.
is one of my favorites, and I haven't rewatched that with the kids yet. I've seen all of Buffy only twice through. Once when it was
Mm,
on, and then once on DVD. But it's one that I could probably, I mean, there's a timelessness to it. You know, it
hmm
doesn't feel, and X-Files has a similar thing. I think there's something about genre pieces which there makes them feel somewhat timeless, you know?
Yeah.
And you know what was interesting with X-Files? I have been rewatching that with the kids to some degree, because my 15-year-old likes monsters, so he loves the
hmm
Monster of the Week. And what's interesting is I loved when I was watching it during the original run, the conspiracy episodes, the serialized ones were what grabbed my attention.
hmm
But now I'm
Yeah.
really admiring the Monster of the Week ones. You know, it's just I
Yep.
wanted to see, oh, what happens next with the aliens. Where does the conspiracy come together when I was younger?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, oh, that was such a brilliant, wonderful
Boring.
hour of TV. You
Yeah.
know, well, like for
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
Monster of Week one. And you know what I also
Exactly.
started watching, which I think is amazing, and I had never watched it before, and it's tough to get. It's not streaming anywhere, is Millennium, which is Chris Carter's other show that he made after X-Files. And I hadn't thought about it in forever, and I was like, I should check it out. It's amazing. It's one of the most
I have to check it
unique,
out.
it's unlike anything else. And Lance
Mm,
Henriksen as a leading man is so strange. And it's just, they don't bother to explain anything. They're like,
uh,
only someone who made X-Files could make this show, where he's just doing whatever he wants. It's extraordinarily dark. There's very little exposition. There's no real explanation of how Frank Black, who's the main character, does the things he does, and it doesn't
mm.
matter. And he never smiles. And I won't spoil this for you, but even if you're not going
Okay.
to watch the show,
No, I'm gonna watch it.
everyone should go on YouTube and watch the opening credits. It is one of the most bonkers opening credit sequences I have ever seen. I was like, is he
I can't
trolling? I
wait.
really literally feel like he made it as a joke and then they let him do it. And he was like, okay, sure. This is the opening credit. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not going to spoil
Oh
it.
my God. Okay, I can't wait. This is so exciting. That's so funny because X-Files is my other favorite show. Buffy, X-Files, and Star Trek TNG were my favorites growing up.
Those are my touchstones.
Really?
We probably talked about this like a decade
Wow.
ago. I just forgot.
Yeah, and forgot because we're old now and we don't
But
remember.
yeah, like Star Trek, like Locutus of Borg, like having to wait
Oh
all
my God,
summer after.
stop.
I still remember being 8 years old, 8 or 9, I might have been 9, and seeing Picard turn. He's like, he's a Borg now, and I had to wait all summer. I thought about every
Yeah,
day what is going to happen next.
I know. I know, totally. I mean, I have a whole like Substack essay I'm planning about masculinity and Jean-Luc Picard because I'm obsessed with like the archetype of masculinity that he represents. That is such a tangent, but it's one of those things I would love to do a rewatch also of TNG and just talk about the outfits. Like just purely
That's immediately what came to mind is Picard on Risa and those weird,
oh my God, those like
extraordinarily
open
uncomfortable
shirts.
looking outfits they were wearing that looked like they were like things that like if your mom was like sewing something with a pattern, there's
Yeah.
leftover fabric, and they
Yes.
sewed them together and made him wear them. And then
Yeah,
Vosh,
like
do we
all very
remember Vosh?
reflective.
Yes,
All the
yes.
girlfriends, all the like weird love interests that they threw at him.
And the fact that Picard didn't he was in a way a sex symbol. Like a lot of
He
women
is,
love
absolutely.
Picard, but he himself,
Yes.
the character, seems so uncomfortable with sex or like
Yeah,
women or
that's
anything.
true. They made him very stiff and like unreachable, but he's still such, I don't know, there's something about him that he's a leader and his morals and his interests, he just feels like he's like up here to me. There's something so
Yes.
aspirational about him as a human being that's why I think that women fall in love with him, like on this, intellectual kind of moral level. But you're completely right that they made him asexual, which maybe is a reaction to Kirk. I mean, I'm sure that
Oh,
that's
that's
some kind of a
interesting.
reaction
Yeah,
to
because
Kirk.
then Riker's the ladies' man, right?
Yeah,
You
they couldn't do
know,
that twice, right?
Yeah.
They couldn't, and they can't have two Rikers on board. That's just like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yes. I
Ugh.
don't know that they ever did a sexual harassment episode.
Well, I
That's
think there is
interesting.
one. I think there is one with Riker where he doesn't have to like prove himself innocent or someone tries to frame him.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to Google that. I think there is one. Like I'm sure that there is one.
I remember there was the episode that was clearly like they're talking about homosexuality, where there was the planet where the characters don't have gender, and they all.
Yes.
I remember when they described their genitalia because Riker was asking about it. It's like
'Cause
it's
he
like a
needed to know.
husk they said it's like a husk. And so that has always stuck in
Oh,
my
I hate
head that
that.
I couldn't stop imagining these aliens to tell you they're
You have
husks.
like some little drawn photos. You're like, hmm. But one reason I bring it up though, I have to say, is that my first script was a co-written script with my brother that was a spec of TNG. And it was like a Picard versus Riker spec. And it's like 9 pages and printed from like a DOS, whatever, like Mac, like the first Mac
Mhm.
with the serrated edges and had no plot. But that was like the first thing where I sat down and was like, I'm going to write an episode of Star Trek because I love this so much. I want to make up my own episode. And I think I was like 9. Do
Wow,
you have something like that?
so you weren't even doing it because of the fact, like, this was because I'm a little older than you, so I remember when reading when I was a teenager that TNG and then Deep Space Nine kept it up, had an
Mm.
open, they would read spec
Mhm.
scripts of the show. And in
No, I
fact,
had no idea.
if I remember correctly, that's how Ron Moore got and Brandon Braga
That's
got their
right.
jobs on TNG. And so that was very hopeful to me as a teenager. I was like, oh, I can
Mhm.
write a Star Trek, but I think that by the time I felt like, okay, I'm good enough to do it, it was kind of, we were in the Voyager days, maybe even, like
Mhm.
I didn't feel up to it. I will say that I'm not going to remember any details, but I was so annoyed by the Star Trek TNG movie, not one of the first ones, because I'll forgive
Okay.
Generations. First
I
Contact
like
is really good.
Generations.
I actually like Insurrection. For some reason, I saw it 3 times in
Mm.
the theater, even though there's some plot holes in that. But I thought it was directed
Mhm.
very well. But then the one where there's the Picard clone, can't remember what it's called.
You mean the
But
one
that
with Tom Hardy? Nemesis?
Yes,
Star Trek
Nemesis, thank you.
Nemesis, maybe?
That one annoyed me so much in that that's how you're gonna kill Data? That's how you're that
Yeah.
I broke out in a notebook how to do a new TNG movie,
So
which was
cute.
going to fix everything, and
I love that.
I have not watched it yet, but my brother has told
Mm.
me that the final season of Picard, the show,
Mm.
does a lot
Mhm.
of the things that we wanted to do back in the
No.
day. That it
Oh, and you
does
involved your brother
great
in it
fans.
too.
Well, he's a writer too, and so
Yes, I know.
he knew what our conversations had been, you know.
Okay. And he
And
remembered that.
so,
Wow.
yeah, and he was like, "Hey, they did all the stuff we used to talk about," and he said
That's
that, like, he
crazy.
said I didn't even need to watch the first season; that I could just watch a catch up.
Mhm.
And I can't remember the guy's name who came in and ran the final season, but my brother said it's perfect, so I can't wait to
Okay.
check that
I
out.
have to watch it. I was
I'm
kind
just
of
giving you
afraid
lots
to
of
watch
TV
it.
homework now.
No, I love it. Do you ever feel like though something is kind of precious to you, so you get afraid of like the new stuff? Like I was a little bit,
Absolutely.
I was afraid to jump in on Picard and then just have it kind of spoil all of this pleasant nostalgia that I have for TNG, Even though the thing that I'm always wanting when I watch new Star Trek is to return to that. So I haven't really seen much of it. I think I saw the pilot when it first came out, and that's all that I've seen of Picard. Have you ever tried to work on any of the shows for the new Star Treks?
I haven't ever gotten meetings on any, but I think because Justified was my first credit, I was like pigeonholed as, oh, you do crime, you do noir,
Oh, that's
right? Or
so
you do Southern
unfair.
stuff. But which is,
Yeah,
it is, but it's like, it's
that's
not
how it
it's
works,
like,
but
it's great. Yeah, it is. And so I finally wrote a genre sample. We were shooting Doomsday then, so I guess that would have been 2017. Like I started while we
mhm.
were on set for a pilot and I finished it that year just so that I could go up for jobs on genre shows and prove I could do it, right? Because that's what I always assumed I'd be doing because I loved genre shows growing up. It
Yeah.
just didn't end up happening, which is fine, but I would have loved to work on The 100 or a show like that. I just
Mhm.
didn't have the samples for it, and so now I do.
Yeah,
So
amazing.
I did, and we'll see because no network is in a hurry at all, but I did
Mhm.
finally sell a genre show in 2024,
Mhm.
in June of 2024, still waiting to see. I wrote the pilot and I'm still waiting to see if I get a room or something because those are the
Oh
time
my
frames we're
gosh.
working with these days. If you're talking to a streamer or
Yeah.
talking to anyone that's not one of the broadcast networks, you're talking easily a year and a half. Like my brother sold a
I
thing
know.
to a basic cable spot and it took almost 3 years. We'll say 2.5 because we won't count the strike because it was pre-strike.
Mm-hmm.
But it took 2.5 years for them to say whether they were going to do a room or not. So no one's in a hurry.
It is so bleak.
It's very
my
annoying.
God. Hence the podcast. Like, we have to find
Yes.
other things to do with this downtime. It's crazy. No, I know. It's really, if you even got any little bit of a career going before these days, like where the industry has changed so markedly, it's really such a new thing. I mean, nobody else knows this on the podcast, but like, you know this, I don't live in LA anymore, so I don't talk about it day and night. But do you find that still living in LA, this is something that like you're sick of talking about, the way that things have changed in the industry for us? Is it something that you would like to get away from a little bit to get back into the creative space, or how is it affecting you?
It's something that I feel like living in LA always feels kind of like work. You know, it always kind of feels like you're at work. And having those conversations can be annoying, but also it can be refreshing when I can commiserate with someone who can identify with what's going on, you know? And so it can, though, become sort of I don't like to sit and complain forever. It's nice to be able to relate, but I do, as you're saying that, I do feel like when I go, you know, out of town, and I'm going to go to Mexico for the first time end of this week for a few days. A writer friend a year ago got a big Airbnb for like 10 writers to go and just, you know, you can write, you can not write, you can relax, we can critique each other's stuff or not. And that feels like a very relaxing idea to me.
Oh my God, what a lovely idea. We should do this in Italy. Get one in Florence.
That's a good idea.
2 years in advance.
Yeah, in order to get people, yeah.
Right? Well, I'm thinking here, should we tell the story of how we met? I'm wondering if that's even interesting, that we met on a Yahoo writers board.
I never know what's going to be interesting to people. Like, I think it could be interesting
I
because
think it's interesting.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So I was in Maryland, and I went to university in the UK, and then I graduated and moved down to London. And I did completely different things. And then I came back and moved into my parents' house for a bit because I had like some weird health problems, and I had decided on a rewatch of Buffy that I was like, you know what? It was always my dream to be a TV writer. Always, always, always. I wanted to do this. And I tried to work for the BBC when I lived in London, and it was like impenetrable. I could not get my foot in the door whatsoever. And I thought, okay, I think I'm just going to move to LA. And to research this move, I got on all the like TV writer boards. And I think the one that I messaged, that I put up a bulletin saying that I was moving to LA, I have no idea what I even posted. Like, how is anyone supposed to respond to that? Like, oh, congratulations, you're moving to LA. I don't even remember the question that I posed to the board, but it was Yahoo Writers Board, right? Was that what it was called?
I believe it was like the Yahoo Writers Group. Like it was like a
TV
mailing
Writers
list group kind of a thing where you would get a digest every day of everyone's emails. I don't even know if such a thing exists anymore.
And
but
how did I find
it?
Like, why was I on that? And why were you on that? Like, so many questions.
I was probably on it for the same reason. Like I probably had been on it since before I moved out because I was on a lot of message boards just looking for advice on, hey, what should I do as far as trying to get an assistant job or get an agent, or how, like, what kind of mixers are there, those sorts of things. And like, I posted all over, and I even direct messaged people on MySpace, like assistants, because I was like, they'll reply to me, right? Like only two people replied to me, and that was really sweet of them, and I'm still friends with them to this day, you know, because once I moved out, I bought them coffee. You know, one of them was a Buffy assistant, actually. Because so, and you know, both of them are working writers now. They were both assistants at the time, and I was like, and so I bought them coffee when I moved out and said, hey, you're the only two people who replied to me when I was looking for advice. Like, I don't know if your story's similar or if you got like 75 responses and I was one of them. I don't know.
You're the only one who ever was like, hey, like, if you want, we can meet up and get a coffee when you move to LA. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I hope he's not a serial killer. And then met you.
And then you knew
were
I was a
lovely.
serial killer.
I was like, he's like the nicest person alive. I can't believe that he took the time out of his day. And you met me at the Grove, and you gave me all this like amazing advice that I think I think still stands up actually. And then I didn't end up taking any of the advice because I immediately started working at CAA. And I got a job for a books agent and just sort of like focused on that for a minute and kind of put my writing ambitions to the side because I felt like, okay, now I'm going to meet everybody that I need to know. But
Right.
that's oftentimes the advice that you get is do a year in an agency or do a year in a management company so you can get to know who the players are and, how everything functions. And this is something I keep asking myself, and because I'm so disconnected from the industry at large, I'm not sure. Do people are these jobs now impossible to get? Has the industry contracted so much that it's like telling someone, "Oh, just go be an assistant on a desk" is like a ludicrous suggestion? I wonder.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I actually feel like that is a better way now than it even was in the past, comparatively, because so many shows. Even I heard there's one broadcast show at least that uses a streaming model where they only
Hmm.
do a 20-week room. And so if you're
Yeah.
trying to come up as an assistant in a room, then you only have a job for 20 weeks. By the time that gets a second season, like you've been out of work for a year
Yeah.
or more. Is the showrunner even going to remember you? And there's
Mm.
no guarantee you get staffed that second year. So like when I was coming up as an assistant on a show, then I was guaranteed employment for like at least 7 months, like sometimes like 8 months. So then I knew, okay, I need to save for the hiatus. And then we
Hmm.
would know within, because the show would already be airing. So by the time I was finished with my job as a writer's assistant or writer's PA, then I would know within 2 months or sooner whether the show was coming back. And I knew they were
Hmm.
probably going to bring me back. And I knew that, okay, season 2, I might get a freelance. Season 3, I might get staffed. I ended up getting staffed season 2. Very fortunate. That
Yeah.
was there was luck, but there was also, as I always say, a preparation for the opportunity. I
Hmm.
had great samples to show Graham, but it was luck that that spot was open because he offered
Yeah.
everyone their jobs back and the staff writer didn't want to come back. And so that's the job I can
Wow.
get, is the staff writer. And Graham doesn't want to
Yeah.
interview 10 people. So he's like, let me read you. If you're any good, I'll hire you.
Amazing.
So that worked out for me. So I guess it is much tougher to come up as an assistant on a show. So I've actually said to people, listen, I never worked at an agency. I never worked at a management company. But if you can get in the lit division of one of those, and I think, and listen, you got to make money. So sometimes it's tough to get the job if you're honest about this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But if you can get
That's
a
right.
person who understands, hey, I'm not trying to be an agent. I'm going to be a great assistant for you. I'll do this for a year, maybe 2 years, whatever. But, I
Mm.
would love to eventually, not right away, but eventually have you read me. Meet your, once I'll have met your clients, if when they have shows, I would love if you've read me for you to pitch me to them, right?
Yes.
Like it's just like how you finesse that in the interview, etc. Like and
Totally.
convince them, no, I'm going to be like so great, such a great assistant, but I'm not trying to be an agent, I
Right.
think that it's because it's so tough to make a living as an assistant on a show now.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you don't make a living either at the agency. They pay you almost nothing.
But at least you're
But it is
employed
like,
for, I assume
yeah,
there's benefits. I don't know, but at least you're
excuse me.
employed all year long.
I think it's like it's almost like that free internship that you work. It's not about how much, it's not about your paycheck. It's about the access that you have. And if you're wise enough to capitalize on that. And usually the commitment that's requested is a year. Like people say, do a year on my desk. Or if it's the head of the department, they might want 2 years to not have to train someone up.
Mhm.
But they ask for a commitment. And then, usually that involves like, if you've done a good job, some kind of an introduction or boot off into the like either executive world or the writing world. So it depends on what you actually want to do. I don't even think that many people come into the agency who want to become agents. If they do, they're in the mail room or it's kind of a different like track, or at least that's how it was when I worked there, which was 2010, which is so long ago now that I don't know if any of my advice is relevant or if anything I'm
I
saying is
feel that way
correct
too.
anymore.
I feel that way too.
You know, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening out there. And I also feel like, from time to time, I'm still doing assistant work because I love working with high level people who know how to make shows and know how to develop things. And I can't have an ego about this. I have to sit down and learn from people who are like, absolute pros and have the vision and the connections and the wherewithal to actually sell something. Because I think that it's also, as you were saying, like you can sell something and then wait for 2 years. So you kind of nowadays have to be so adaptable and just completely lose the ego. Whereas when I first sort of, started working in the entertainment business, it was like people were really tied to the tier system of graduating in TV. I'm speaking like graduating and leaving behind these these embarrassing past of being an assistant, or like very married to the idea, well, you're number two and I'm the co-producer, and just like all of the sort of tensions between all of those ranks. And now rooms have shrunk so much. People are like only working with their best friends
Yeah, I
and
know.
people they've known for 20 years. Like kind of a lot of this sort of like superficial, I don't know, distractions have fallen away in a weird way, I think.
Well, I
Unless you're
think,
working at CBS or something and it's
I mean, I
everyone has to
definitely
stay.
think that and I'm at the very beginning stages of trying to work on a feature spec for the first time in forever,
Mm.
because I feel like it's just as tough to get staffed now as it is to sell a show, is how it feels.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
As it is to sell a movie. I feel
Mm.
like it's
Mm.
not that selling a movie's gotten easier, it's that selling a
Right.
show or getting staffed have gotten so much harder. Like
True.
it's because it's to the point where like it's really tough as a mid-level or lower level, even more than as an
Mm-hmm.
upper level,
Mm.
because like who are you competing against? Like when I was like 2 of the seasons I worked on SWAT, I was consulting like the treasured 3 day a week consulting producer job where, I wrote a couple scripts, I was there 3 days a week and I developed the other 2 days. You cannot get that anymore because
Mm-mm.
like I'm looking at like there's two people I know like who are friends of mine who've run shows who are co-EPs on the FBI shows because like they need a job, and
Yeah.
so and they're working every day. They're working full time. And these are showrunners like who've run multiple shows. And so it's like if that's who you're competing with at the co-EP level, then you're definitely not getting a consulting job, and it's going to be tough to get unless
Mm.
you know the person. It's going to be so tough to get those jobs.
I think it's great to be busy and to be working and to be in these rooms, and it's a blessing. Like I kind of think good for them for just
I
saying I
agree.
want to
Oh,
work,
I agree.
you
I'll
know?
do it because I'll do it too. It's just that you have to come
Yeah.
to grips with it's the same thing you're saying. It's like you
Yeah.
have to like let go of the old way of looking at
Past.
things because
Yeah.
things are different now. And I mean I feel like and I've been unable. I think I need to like talk to someone and really research this because it would be an interesting thing to write an essay about. But I feel like at the end of syndicated shows, probably people
Mm-hmm.
faced a similar thing because there used to be this whole side market of many like Star Trek shows were one of them until they were on UPM. There's Star Trek,
Right.
there's Hercules, there's Xena, there's what's it called, Renegade. There's all these syndicated shows, and a lot of those writers, when syndicated shows ended, those types of shows that are just in syndication, they because I looked it up one day, I was like, what happened to my favorite writers from Hercules? What happened to a lot of them? Just immediately their careers ended. A lot of them, because there was just this, and I don't know, is it
That's so
that there
brutal.
was a bias against them, or is it that they weren't willing to take a step back, to work in mainstream TV? I don't know, but it's like the industry changes, and it changes so much and so fast. And
Yeah.
like, are verticals the next thing? I don't know. Like, should I be doing a vertical? You can make a vertical and get it covered by the WGA if you work
Right.
at it. Like, but is that next? Because people thought streaming wasn't going to be a thing. People thought that was a joke, and it was not a joke.
Mm.
And
Not a
verticals
joke.
are already huge in China. So it's like, should I be looking at
Oh,
that?
that's
And I'm like,
interesting.
man, do I have to be looking at the new thing all the time? Can't I ever
I know.
relax?
No, you could never rest, my friend. I mean, I think in terms of these specific writers dying out, I see it from a little bit the representative side, which is this idea of it's the pigeonholing that we're talking about. It's like my question of like, oh no, gee shucks, you couldn't work like on a genre show, like why not? It's this pigeonholing that happens, and that's how
Hmm.
we're marketed. Like on the representative side, we're marketed in a certain way, and I think there's much more like cushion to kind of break out and do different things now because there's a few examples of successful people who've done that. But it's still kind of much the same that if you can sell someone very quickly, snapshot, you understand who they are, it's hard to break people's conception out of that, like buyer's conception out of who that writer is. And I think that things were even more in that era of TV, even more sort of like in their own channels and bifurcated, that you had like, people could not cross. And this is, of course, before even movie stars were making TV. So
Yeah.
TV was a completely different world. And my ex-husband was at CAA for a long time. And one thing that he would talk about, how unfair it was when someone's name went cold. When you're at the staffing meeting and you're pitching your clients for different things. And this could have been a friend of yours for 15 years or someone you really care about or who you really believe in as a writer, but they're cold.
Yeah.
And
Like,
what does that curse mean? What does that mean?
Everything is Zoolander. Everything is Hansel.
Yes.
He's so hot right now. What does that mean? That's all it is.
What does it
It's
mean?
so annoying. It's so frustrating, especially
It's
like
all
because
perception.
like my mind works at a very literal, very practical
Mhm.
basis, and so
Yeah.
that makes Hollywood a difficult industry to navigate because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I don't even
Yeah.
understand what happened in this meeting. What were we talking about for
Right.
45 minutes?
Yeah.
I don't.
It's like, what are the rules? What am I meant to
Yes,
do?
exactly.
How do I pass go?
Exactly. I want rules.
Yeah. No, there are none. And it's just kind of like this, this kind of amorphous sort of reputation and heat and energy behind someone. And everyone's talking about it. But as we know, human beings tire of the same subject and then reject it and stab it. And so I think that's literally what happens to people's careers. It's like, I'm sick of hearing this person's name. It's time for their downfall. Their downfall arc needs to begin now.
Yes, that is a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you just have to be happy with your moment in the sun or have a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of different sort of passions and talents at the same time that you have going. And that's the part where I say, when can I rest? When?
Yes.
When
Or
can I
both,
rest?
and enjoy your victories when they come, which is always tough for me too, because
Yes.
I'm always like, okay, well,
Oh my
what's the
God.
next thing? What's the next thing? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to enjoy those because you don't know. You're not guaranteed. And this is something we
Oh
all
my God, yes.
know, but we don't really know. Like,
Right.
I hadn't, even though I would say it, I hadn't internalized it. That like, no, I
Mhm.
really need to enjoy this victory because this may not happen again. It's like I know when I made The Madness, I co-ran it with Stephen Belber, the playwright who had created the show, and he had just never run a show before, so Netflix had to partner him with somebody. And I remember one of the things he said, and it's not a literal quote, but when we had, because originally when I met with him, I said, I won't co-run. I'll run it and I will respect your point of view, but I've co-run before and it makes the job harder because it's like a marriage then. You can't make any decisions without consulting the other person. And I need, I was like, and so we talked for an hour and he was like, listen, I understand what you're saying, but we've just met each other, It's like because he had met with 7 people. I was the one he liked the most, but he wanted to co-run it. And he was like, listen, we've talked for 1 hour. You talked for an hour to Netflix. He checked my references and talked to people I worked with, but he was like, I may never get to create a show again. Because he'd been through the gamut of all kinds of different things in theater, like he'd seen himself be a star. He'd seen himself go, as we were saying, cold. He'd got a show on TV and then didn't have a show on TV. He directed a movie and then it didn't turn out the way he wanted, all these things. And so he'd experienced those things and was like, I can't, this might be my one shot and I don't want to feel like I didn't have any control over it. And I completely understood and sympathized. And I was like, you know what? I'd be saying the same thing. I'd be saying the same thing at this point in my career. And so I was like, sure, we'll co-run it, because I was like, I can't argue with that and I understand it.
Did that make the co-running challenge?
It was still the same challenge. It was still the same challenge, but I mean, I think we were both empathetic to each other's points of view, and the show ended up being, I think, much better than it had. I don't know how to say this. I'll say that it had a right to be, just because it wasn't, because Stephen and I have very different writing styles and sensibilities. And so from the first week in the room, if you had just read our notes the first week in the room, you might have thought, man, this show is never getting off the ground. But we figured out what each other did well. And I was like, I made a decision, you know what? Hey, he wrote this pilot, sold the pilot to Netflix. I'm going to change my style of writing to write like him, and I'm not going to have ego about it. And to his credit, especially as someone who did the Laramie Project and, had sold this months before I was involved, he did not he did not complain at all about me rewriting him, and we would just pass the script back and forth so many times that there were times when I was
Excellent.
like, I'd be watching the episode, I didn't know who wrote that line because we had
Yeah, you
passed it
couldn't
back and
remember.
forth. Like, it was such a
Yeah.
hodgepodge of colors, like going back and forth. And at first that
Yeah.
was annoying to me. And then I was like, you know what? This is becoming, our styles are congealing, and it became, I think it's a very unique show because of that.
That's so fascinating. This reminds me of The Expanse, because we had of course, the book authors of The Expanse in the room with us, and they talked to us so much about the process. Like, I came on in season 4, so by that time it was like a well-oiled machine. But there was, of course, the first season where they had to learn how to TV write. And Narain, the showrunner, he had his style of writing, and he kind of adapted into the book, how would you put it? Like the cadence of the book, the style of the book, which belongs to a melding of two people already. So it's already not one of them, it's two of them that synthesize into the book. And so then, Narain kind of like showed them the ropes of how to write, and they figured out how to write on the job for TV. Now, when those guys still work together, and when you are in a room with them, like listening to them go through the notes, they just have such a shorthand, and all respect each other's sort of point of view and voice. And it's really Socratic, I would say. And that actually was part of one of the questions that I wanted to ask you originally about when you run a show, because Narain's style is this sort of Socratic method where we all talk. It's open-ended. Every voice is kind of equal. If you're like, wait, that doesn't quite make sense, he wants to hear it, even if you're like the janitor with a broom in the corner. He's like, why didn't it make sense? Tell me. And because he does it that way, and because we're airing out the notes together, everyone has a chance to kind of weigh in on something if it doesn't really like sink in. And the end product is beautiful. And I was curious if you, as a showrunner, like, do you have a philosophy that you bring to your room, or a style that's like just yours when you're working with your younger writers?
It honestly, it's a very collective thing, the way I like to do it also. And I think that comes from, I think I would have done it anyway, because I've always looked at it as, especially once I was doing it for a living, as, yeah, this is a bunch of people coming in a room and trying to make up a story together. It's like, okay, that's all we're doing. It's just, and so I know that I've heard that like Sorkin was very hierarchical. I don't know him, but that's what I've heard. I've heard of other rooms that are very hierarchical. Unjustified, it was sort of a mix depending on which EP was running the room. Like, Graham was very, very democratic and didn't really care where the pitches were coming from. Some of the other EPs were a little more hierarchical. Still a great group of people, and it was a great learning experience for sure. But like on SWAT and on The Player, were very democratic. Like, no one, like the showrunners on those shows didn't even talk about or think about the position anyone was. It was just, we're in a room where, and like Sean on SWAT, I didn't know what to expect. He's one of my writing heroes. And I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm getting to write for Sean Ryan. But it was a big room. There was like Sean plus 9 of us, if I remember correctly. Maybe it was 8 for season. It was 8 or 9. It was really big. We're very experienced. And I was like, oh my God. And he was very regimented in the way he did things. So that was a learning experience for me. We didn't take lunch breaks for the first 6 months, or maybe it was 5 months. We would just work through lunch, which I know that's normal for a lot of rooms. I had never done it before. Dude, Unjustified, and I was in the pre-pilot room for Snowfall, which Dave Andron, who was on Justified, did, so it was the same kind of style. We took 1.5-hour lunches. I took naps. It was amazing. And so then I'm going to SWAT, and I'm like, wait, we're not going to take lunch, and we're working till 7, which, again, I know people who had to work till midnight on rooms, but I was used to being done at 5. It's like, we're working till 7. What's going on?
You're like,
But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I think because the rooms that I'd been in were very democratic, and it's just, hey, we're just trying to make a thing, then that's how I treated it as well. So even though I like to run a democratic room, and my Mark Bianculli, who I ran Lincoln Rhyme with, would often use the phrase, and lots of showrunners will say this, like, best idea wins. I disagree with that phrase, because that's a subjective thing. The idea the showrunner likes the most wins, And so,
true.
and I don't say that to disempower anyone, but someone has to be the person in charge. And that doesn't, my point of view is that being the leader, being the person who makes the decisions, is just, that is my job. That doesn't not mean I'm more important or anything. It just means that is my function. My function is to be the person who makes the decisions on what we're going to do, And so and someone has to do that. We're not going to take a vote on literally everything, but
Absolutely.
I also will listen. I mean, there was a moment, and I don't want to like speak out of school and say what it was, but there was a moment on The Madness, like in the middle of the room, because the first 2 weeks were in person, and then the next 18 weeks were on Zoom, because Steve lived in New York and I'm in LA. And so he was in LA for 2 weeks and then went back and we're on Zoom. But we'd been in the room for like, we're halfway through, we're like 8 weeks in or something, and we had a few scripts and everything, and some of the writers felt really uncomfortable with a particular like storyline. Like they felt like or a particular like direction it was going. They felt like it was problematic, and it wasn't what
Hmm.
they wanted to be saying. And I listened to that, and I said, you know what? I appreciate you guys saying that respectfully. Let's go through the scripts. We're going to stop everything right now. And tomorrow we're just going to go through the scripts we've written, and you guys talk about what you're disagreeing with. And, Steve and I can respond to it and make adjustments if we feel it's necessary. And there are some showrunners who, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too much because there's all different ways to do things, but there are some showrunners who would not have entertained that for a moment,
No. Yeah.
and that's their right to do. But I felt like, you know what, especially in this age where these writers, other than one of them, we were only going to get to keep our number two into production. So
Right.
all these writers, this is their only chance to influence the show, is these 20 weeks. They're then going to see it come out 18 months from now and be like, I hope some of my lines are in it. I hope something I wrote is
Right.
in it. So,
Yeah.
you know what? It sucks to be in it. That sucks to not be a part of making the show. I'm going to listen to them. So,
Right.
yeah.
I also think it's smart of you because people sometimes have a lens on something that you don't have. Your mind can't be everywhere all at once when you're up top here trying to oversee everything. And so if somebody is flagging something for you and you listen to them, you could be saving your ass also.
Yes,
So I
that's
think it's
100%
really,
sure.
really wise of you
Yeah.
to do that. But I also take your first point, which is that at the end of the day, it has to fall to you and be your voice and sort of your final product as the showrunner. And I never understood that before I had my first real job in TV, that it really does fall to the showrunner and it really is their show in a lot of ways. And also the blame goes to them. The responsibility's on their shoulder. If something doesn't work, it can't be, well, it's all of these people's fault. No, like it has to fall on one figurehead who's also the person who's in that, cutting room and who's mixing it and doing the color and putting all the final touches on it that bring it into being like one solid thing. And that's the super magical part, I think, that I wish everybody could get the chance to see. And if you are an assistant in a room, then as a showrunner's assistant, at least, you will get to observe this process. And I think that I've learned so much through post more than any other time period, because the writer's room, it's all this cerebral experience where you're imagining it playing. You're like, you've got your board, you have all the scenes out, you've got your outlines, you put the scripts together, the scripts are great. But even when you're reading the scripts and imagining the episode, it's still just like happening in your brain and how you see it. And then there's the set experience. And then there's post. And all three are such distinct like phases of making this final product. And it is such a huge job that so
Yes.
much is on your shoulders. Like it is so stressful. I mean,
Yes.
like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Just like shortening in general, or post, or just the differences?
Like just the synthesis of creating this final product and how it really changes and it does fall on you to deliver the final like piece of art that it is,
Yeah, I mean, I think it is honestly very magical that any show is ever good.
Yes,
Like or
literally.
that there are as many. Like, I don't say any show, but it's amazing that there's more than one good show that comes out
I
a
know.
year, because it is such a synthesis. It is such a collaborative thing. And I also think it is very important for anyone running a show to be very honest with themselves and honest in as they're doing it, in discovering what they're good at and what they're not good at. And some
Hmm.
showrunners, and this is not me, but some people like Brian Fuller are able to just kind of do everything, and they have it all so in their head that they can, because I knew people who wrote on Hannibal and they're like, yeah, we send in scripts and then somehow like the first day of shooting, it's totally rewritten and so much better. And he had it all in his head. And sometimes the pages don't come
It's
out till the
amazing.
day of, but they're amazing.
Yeah.
And it all fits
Right.
together, and then he knows he already has in his mind how to put it together in post, etc. Right. And I am a big delegator, like I don't have enough time in the day to be able to hold all the story in my head and be fixing that. And then when we're shooting, have really strong opinions on the wardrobe and the production design and the props. And so I want to hire really good department heads who
Yeah.
will just listen in the concept meeting to what I'm looking for. And when I say really good, I mean people who are going to can communicate with me well, who can
Yes.
understand. That's what I'm looking for when I'm doing a staffing meeting, when I'm meeting possible department heads, DP, etc. Is, are we communicating? There have been writers who I loved their sample and who have gone on, one of which I have in my mind to be much more successful than me, who I didn't hire on shows because we just couldn't communicate. Like
Right.
I would ask a question and talk because I just want to make a conversation and see, can we communicate? Are we going to be able to communicate? Or because you can be great at this, but if you're doing a different thing because you're not understanding what I'm saying, then that's just more work for me. So anyway,
Right.
I want department heads who I can delegate to because they're going to understand what I'm looking for. And then when, like in post was a lot more fun for me on The Madness than it had been on other shows because we were cutting all of them at the same time. So the fact that we're doing that is a positive thing about streaming, at least for me. It was easier for me to look at the whole show holistically when I could shuffle everything in post. Whereas if you're
Yep.
chasing an air date, and so you're doing all the things at once, there are pros to that also. And I would, all things being equal, I'd kind of rather go back to that model because then you have
Really?
time
Okay.
frames for things instead of
Mm.
like, I have no idea when this show will air or when any of this is going to happen, and you can have longer rooms, etc. But that was cool to have them all in post and be able to play with all of them and pull
Right.
pieces of this one into this and see. And instead of being like, "Oh, I wish I'd done that in episode 3, but that already aired,"
Right.
like,
Ugh.
so it was more fun for me than it has been in the past. But I think my favorite part personally is always going to be the writing. Like, I love writing. And I would be perfectly happy to, honestly, to be David Kelly and hand off the script to people and be like, make the show. If you want to change something in it, let me know. But if you're not changing it, just go make the show. I'll come back in and
Oh my
look at
gosh.
it in post. That would be amazing for me because I don't like, because when you're on, especially when you're in production and on set, prep is one thing. I don't mind prep, but when you're on set, you're so useless as a writer, unless you're like a writer director, unless you're directing it. I feel like I'm useful for 1 minute out of every hour when someone has a question about something, or when I'm like, they actually need to say this instead of that rewording because that screws up what we're doing in the next episode. There's no way for you to know that. It's like, I just feel like my time could be better spent elsewhere. I think that's what it is I
Right.
feel it's an alien environment for me. Now, again, like, this is another difference where if you're doing streaming, you're on set forever and it becomes less of an alien environment. You get to meet everyone. You're more just a part of the crew who's serving a purpose. When I was on Justified or SWAT and I'm producing, I'm there for 2 weeks and then I'm gone for 3 months and I'm back for 2 weeks. It just, you're just trying to relearn everyone's name. That's
Yeah,
just,
I can imagine.
that feels more useless than if you're the showrunner and you're there for the whole time. Then you feel like, okay, I know what's going on here. I'm part of the machine.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I wanted to ask, from your comments about like when you're hiring the wardrobe, the makeup department, all the
Department
different
heads,
department
yeah.
heads, and you want to find out if you can communicate with them, or even just your staff writer. You want to make sure that they understand the conversation you're having about where you want them to take this episode when they go home, so you don't have to rewrite it like so entirely. You want them to get it. Has this profession, has becoming a showrunner made you yourself a better communicator because you all of a sudden understand working with so many different people and different types of people and creatives, especially, who kind of, I don't know, aren't the most neurotypical of bunches? Has it actually forced you to become a more clear communicator because you're like, I have a half an hour to explain this very clearly in this tone meeting, and I'm going to explain it and I'm going to decipher if they're like getting what I'm putting down. So I feel like
To
there's been
some
some growth
extent,
for
yes.
you.
So to some extent it has. Actually, to a great extent. I think that I have always been a solid communicator in general. However, when it comes to communicating what the purpose of a scene is, what the purpose of a line is, like, I certainly during the first half of my career, I really resisted that. It annoyed me so much. I'm not saying I'm some great writer, but I have the heart of a novelist. I want to just write stuff and let you decide. You can take it however you want. I know what it means to me, and it can mean whatever you want it to mean to you. I don't want to
I
explain
love
any of
that.
this. I don't want to explain how I did it. I don't want to explain what it means. Here it is, and I finally came to grips with the fact that it's like, I can't do that. I can't do that. It's
Yeah.
just, get over it, VJ. This is part of the job. Embrace it.
Yeah.
Like embrace the fact that I'm talking to myself, you, VJ, are learning more about why you did this by being forced to explain why you did it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, you'll get better because you'll know why you did it. Because this is one of the reasons why it would be
Oh,
tough for me to
interesting.
ever really teach writing. When I have guest taught before, I have realized that because I do so much of writing instinctively, I haven't,
Mm-hmm.
it's tough for me to explain how to do things. And I think that I've gotten better about understanding why I do certain things, why certain things need to be done, why there's a tradition
Mm-hmm.
of doing them a certain way by being forced to communicate those things. So in that way, it's made me better at communicating how to make TV, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You watching anything interesting at the moment? I always like to ask people that. Besides, what was it,
So
Millennia? What's the show that I need to find on YouTube?
Millennium, yes.
Millennium.
Yes. So what am I watching that's interesting? So I am watching Millennium for the first time on DVD, which is awesome. I love it. I very rarely watch shows when they're first airing because I'm often busy and I'm like, okay, I can't try everything out. I'll wait until I hear that it's good. Exceptions to that, there have been 2 exceptions to that. Very recently, I watched The Chair Company because I love Tim Robinson. So
Oh
of
yeah,
course I was going to watch
which
The
is
Chair
funny.
Company. I thought it was really good. I was surprised that it ended on a cliffhanger. I think it's okay to say that. It's been out for a while. I was surprised that it ended on a cliffhanger I thought it was going to wrap everything up and be a limited, but apparently there's another season, so I'm excited about that.
Wow.
Pluribus. And I'm watching Pluribus because it's like, okay, I'm going to
I'm watching
watch
that.
what Vince Gilligan's doing.
Yeah.
And the marketing for that show was so good,
So
and her
good.
performance is so good. Like, you have to be such a great actor to play that character and have me identify and love you, even though it's like, okay, I identify with everything you're saying and with your attitude and everything, even though you're kind of annoying. Like,
She's
one of my
prickly.
kids wouldn't
Yeah.
watch it with me. One of my kids was like, no, I can't
Yeah.
watch this anymore. I can't watch it. Why isn't she doing this or that? But I understand her,
Yeah.
and she's doing such a great job. And Vince Gilligan is he's great at so many things, but he is so
God, I
good
know.
at making you have to know what happens next episode. Like, you
Have to
have,
know.
at the end of an episode, you're like, I'm ready to watch the next one. I'm ready.
Yeah.
He's so good at that. So I'm
He's unbelievable.
So I'm enjoying Pluribus. I enjoyed Chair Company. I haven't finished Pluribus because I was on a deadline. So I think there's 2 episodes left in the season, I think, that I
I
have to
also
watch.
haven't finished it yet. But like, can I just say the pacing, like, is so incredible and it blows my mind. He's so bold. He's like the most
Yes.
bold, television maker that I've ever experienced. I think he's so brave and he doesn't play by any of the rules that are sort of prescribed. And, you talk about teaching, like, on some level, you can't really teach writing. Like, on some level, you really can't. It's like people have a voice and they have a way that they express themselves. And you can teach them some, like almost like the bumpers in the bowling alley. You can give them like bumpers. But to me, it's like you just have to put yourself on the page and practice and come out that way. Like, he's the perfect example of somebody who I feel like he could have never taken a writing class in his life. Doesn't matter even one bit. He's so fascinating. And also an X-Files writer, no? Like, wasn't he on the
Yes,
X-Files?
that's right. That is right.
And he has some great
Yes.
episodes too. And Pluribus is so wildly different, but also has the same effect on me where I feel like so instantly engaged. He's just such a
Yes.
genius.
Yes.
And I think a real role model to all of us to just really like do your own thing and find your own voice. Be singular.
Yes. Yes. And by all accounts, a great boss and a great dude.
Really?
Like, you don't have to be a jerk to be a good showrunner, And like it's like those guys and gals who were writing TV in the 90s and even especially the 90s and even a little bit up into the early 2000s and certainly the 80s, like, it was a much harsher environment then. There was an X-Files writer who I interviewed with. It was one of the guys who went on to do 24 with Howard Gordon, who was also an X-Files writer, but it was one of the other guys. And he was talking about how on X-Files, they would fire assistants or staff writers for having bad handwriting. on the board. Like Chris Carter would
Crap.
be like, okay,
I'd
you're
be
fired.
fired.
I don't like your handwriting. And it's like, oh
Oh
my
no.
God, that's insane. And it's like, though, and when you talk to those guys, it's like, oh yeah, you guys have been through a fire. You guys have been through like abusive environments, and it's actually one of the reasons. It's interesting. It's one of the reasons that, and I'm not trying to like gin up sympathy for Joss Whedon, but I love Buffy, and I understand in reading that ill-fated interview he did a couple years ago, I was like, I kind of understand why you're confused about this backlash, because for the time you were the nicest showrunner anyone, and you knew that. You knew you were nicer than everyone else. So why are you getting flack about this? So that, again, that's not an excuse, but I also understand his confusion having talked to people about what shows were like back then,
Right. I mean, yeah, I mean, you hear the mailroom stories of getting phones like thrown at you in the 80s. And I experienced it because like the agencies, there's like a parallel there between the rooms and the culture in the agencies. And I experienced it myself working in CAA. Like they were much nicer to us, but then also they're much nicer now than they were to us because there's just so many scandals that happen and then people get fired. They get canceled. Cancellation happens.
Yes.
And I guess Joss Whedon is pre-cancellation era. So he didn't even conceive of what that would look like. He was just like, well, I have a nice bedside manner, so why would they fire me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of feel like, was that the interview that he gave where he talked about watching a kid drown on a property?
Yeah, I heard about that. I felt like that was
Is that a
something a
different
PR
one?
person told. I think it's a different one. I think that's a different
Okay,
one.
it's a different one. That's the
Okay,
one that I read.
Okay, because I think this was the one where he was in his house the entire interview, or maybe I just forgot that element. Although that felt to me, I remember that element as an excerpt at least, and that felt to me like a PR person said, say this, that's going to be an excuse for, it's like, I don't know. This just seems like I'm sad about it, but I don't think that's an excuse for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so torn on this one too, because I have to say, I just love his work so much and I love Buffy, and it's not Buffy without him. And I know that there's a remake coming and I have super high hopes for it because I also think Sarah Michelle Gellar's genius, and I'm sure that they'll put something good out there.
I've heard it's good. I know people who've read the script who were huge Buffy fans, and they're like, they nailed it. They nailed it with the script.
Amazing.
We'll see with the production.
Amazing. Well, that's really encouraging because I was sort of having a hard time imagining a world of Buffy without Joss.
I know.
I was like, will it even be worth my time to investigate this?
One of the interesting things is that it's such an issue. Like you could do an entire essay on this, and I'm sure someone has. But like the Marvel movies are what they are. They could not pay Joss Whedon enough, like co-wrote at least. But like that was quite a high task to make superheroes something people took seriously, like in their real costumes and everything. And you know how he did it was using the same style and the same, I'm kind of making fun of the genre at the same time, the quips, the Whedonisms that allowed adults to let down their guard and be like, oh yeah, it's okay for me to enjoy this because it's a joke. It's a joke, and that was so smart. And there are not many filmmakers who could have done it. But what it's done is they then were like, well, this is our style. All the Marvel movies will be like that. So they all have that kind of Whedonism, like kind of sense of humor. And DC tried to copy it too. And so now that style feels rote because it was so ever present in Marvel. So I almost feel like to reboot Buffy, it has to have a slightly different sensibility. Like, I don't know if you could reboot it with Joss or redo it with Joss because it would feel like rote because the Marvel movies stole it or he gave it to them. So anyway.
Right. That's so interesting. So like his style is now so much in the vernacular that you're not even recognizing it as his.
Yes.
Now it's like this passé style. And it's like he's the one who made it all fresh and interesting and engaging. And now we're at the end of that.
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
We're in a
you said that very well.
Joss like thing.
Yes.
But his thing, though, for me that I always loved was he can be like Shakespearean and camp, but it's camp that just toes the edge that it doesn't go cringe. Because sometimes I find campy writing really off-putting, but it's never off-putting with him. It's always so funny.
I agree. And it's interesting that like if like I've only rewatched it once. I saw it when it was airing, and then I rewatched it once. And the first season is campier than any other season. The first season also has a couple of writers that didn't come back who were from Hercules and Xena. And I think that they brought some of that sensibility. And I think that Joss realized that that wasn't what he wanted to do, that that was a little too far on the camp side. But if you rewatch that first season, there's a different flavor to it than the later season.
To it. There is, for sure. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also the monsters of the week were cheesier and more broad in the first season. Like the villains became more interesting as it went on.
Yeah.
I felt just from week to week. The main villains were always good. Like the main end of season villains were always excellent. You know, oh my gosh, I'm just really marveling at all of the research that you've done on Xena and Hercules writers. Like it just paid off in spades in this conversation.
I have mentioned a lot of this conversation. I think it's just because there's that formative time.
It's so cute.
There's that formative time, you know, in your middle school, teenage years, when you have time to watch a lot of TV. And if you're someone who wants to be a writer, or at the time I was thinking director, writer, what I just wanted to make things, right?
Yeah.
And
so you knew back then.
So I was noticing what the names were, you know, who were the names on these shows.
What were your favorite movies growing up?
One is still a favorite, but I fully understand that part of it is probably sentimental. It is like Silverado, which is a Western Lawrence Kasdan did with Scott Glenn and Kevin Kline and Danny Glover and Jeff Goldblum and Brian Dennehy and like so many people. Like I'm forgetting people.
Wow.
But and Kevin Costner and that's a really fun Western. And it's really solid too. I mean, Kasdan knows what he's doing. I know Jim Beaver strongly disagrees with me. He hates Silverado for whatever reason. He doesn't think it takes itself seriously. I disagree. But that was a favorite. I loved the movie Cloak and Dagger, which was Henry Thomas, post E.T., did Cloak and Dagger, which that had elements, a Pan's Labyrinth-esque element where it's like, okay, is this thing he's seeing real or not real? You know, where it's like, is it real or not real? And it has... I love a movie where it's, I mean, Buffy did it. Deep Space Nine did an episode. Are you the dreamer or the dream? Yeah. You know, I love it when there's that thing because that just something feels very real about it. You know, it's like sometimes you're in a state where you're like, is this real? Is any of this real? Sometimes when I'm in an airplane, I'm like, if we all stopped believing that we could be flying up in the air, would it crash? You know, like sometimes I'm like, if I really stop and think, I'm just in this piece of metal flying through the sky. I'm this close to death. If I start thinking about it, it feels surreal.
Yeah, I hate that. And I think about it every time I fly. I'm like, to the point where I have to distract myself to not, I hate looking out of the window. Do you hate looking out of the window?
No, because it's like, it just, those thoughts only come sometimes. Like, I don't know. It's like, I'm generally able to like not even think about it. I'm just like going about my day. But sometimes you start thinking about the world, or like you can be in any situation. You're like, this is kind of surreal, this situation I'm in right now. Like, and flying is just an example of it. Sometimes you just feel like you're between worlds in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, like this just like creeping awareness of like the simulation is what I like to call it. Like this creeping awareness that like you're like in this, you're like this character in this mode and you're like, I'm in the room now, like all of that sounds insane, but I know exactly what you mean when you all of a sudden have this awareness that takes you out of just humming along in your daily process.
Yes, it's like when you're not just being a cog in something. But but yeah, like Cloak and Dagger, Silverado. I really liked Beauty and the Beast, the musical, the Disney musical, and then
like the new one,
the cartoon one,
the cartoon,
92. Yeah, as a kid. And then
how did you feel about the Prince face reveal? Like, were you like, ew?
I mean,
that's
listen,
a big topic
I was
online.
12. I was 12, so I was like, what? He's a wimp now? I wanted him to be the Beast, you know. I wanted to be a big tough guy. And I was like, he can be nice and still not have long hair. I mean, again, I was 12. But I remember just loving that story construction, and I loved the ending where all the little like the candlestick and all the critters are like fighting against the invading army. I mean, I love any of that Swiss Family Robinson type fighting the pirates with booby traps, like Home Alone sort of a thing. Yeah, no, LA, it is a weird thing about LA where, especially if you've been there long enough to have had tons of general meetings, when you see someone you don't know, you have to really think, do I know that person? Did I have a meeting with them, or did I see them on TV? Sometimes it's even someone you saw in a commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you stare, and then you're like, no, I'm not staring because like I'm interested in you or like I think you're so great. I'm staring because I recognize you. But they're aware of it. This is one of the things that I don't miss about LA is all the awkward social situations that you find yourself in. Or even at like a barbecue for your kid's school and you're like talking to some parent with like the beer and you're like having a nice chat and then you're like, wait, do I know them from something? Or
Yeah.
that's like one of the things
And
I definitely
so
don't miss.
difficult to know when you're meeting someone, does this person really want to be my friend, or do they want a job, or does this person, I could be good friends with this person, but they seem to think I just want to be friends with them because I want a job, but I don't. I really like, you know what I mean? It is this very weird. I mean, it's probably the same in Silicon Valley for people in tech, you know, or,
Probably.
you know, it's like anywhere where there is an industry that is like the main industry of the town, it's going to, you're going to feel like you're at work all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really true. It's such a rare thing to live somewhere where you say that you're a writer and have someone not be like, oh, and then try to like give you a script.
Yeah, that's
For me at
true.
least, like when I moved out of LA, talking to people and having them not then try to somehow like tell me their backstory or pitch something to me was always like a really like shocking thing. And then you unlearn it, and then I think it's really wild to go back into that atmosphere. Like I don't even know if I could. I would, but like it would be very interesting to live full time somewhere where what you do is the main industry of the town. I find it's so interesting because it's like the beginning of our conversation was all about this thrust that takes you to LA because that's where your dreams are going to happen and you work so hard to make it happen. And then along the way, you also kind of, you know, have this experience where you realize maybe you can create better when you're not there, when you're not surrounded by this constant input.
Yeah, I mean, Bill DeBook has it made, in my opinion, like who created Ozark. Like he lives in Missouri. He writes pilots, other people run them. Like I met on this show MIA that's set in Miami. It was a good script. He's a really good writer, obviously. And I can't remember the woman's name, Karen something. She was a non-writing producer, and she was going to run the show because DeBook doesn't run shows. He creates shows. He sells them, at least one every year. A lot of them get made, or at least they get a room or something, and he doesn't have to go in the room. He doesn't do anything. He just sells the pilot. And it's like, I love, oh my God, amazing. Like, and it's like, but you have to have a hit. And also he's a feature writer too. So having the accountant right after or right before Ozark, I can't remember, they gave him the ability to do that. Just like Taylor Sheridan, people loved the Yellowstone script. So, and they were right that it was kudos to those execs for recognizing what was going to be successful. You know, like regardless of what you think about it,
Montana?
He lives in Dallas.
He
lives in Weatherford. He bought this enormous ranch in Weatherford, which is a suburb of Dallas where I grew up. But it's like he just told him, like, and he had written Sicario, so he had the clout to do this, to say, okay, I'll sell to you, but you can't ever give me any notes. And they did it. And you know, and it's like you have to do something to have the clout to get it. And like I haven't done that yet.
You will. Yeah. I do have a follow-up question for you, maybe our final question of the night, because I've taken so much of your time. But when you said that you had the heart of a novelist, would you ever become a novelist?
I mean, I would love to do that. I would have to. I haven't written prose in so long. And I know, like, my mentor from grad school works for a publisher. And he was a longtime editor. He was a science fiction author. His name is Tony Daniel. And he was an award-winning science fiction novelist for years, and then he was teaching at grad school and still publishing a little, but it's so hard to make a living writing novels. And I'm not a fast writer, just like I'm not a fast reader. And it's one of those things where right now I've been able to convince my brain I should at least try my hand at short fiction again, because Boxer Bomb's always selling those short stories for like 6 figures. I'm like, okay, I can convince the practical side of my brain, yes, you need to make money, but you could write something fun and make money with a short story. So I might put my toe in the waters with that and then eventually like try a novel. It is somewhat daunting. I mean, I worked with Walter Mosley briefly, and he's such a fast writer, and he's very good. I bought his book, which I haven't read yet, but I bought his book last year. This year, you will write your novel, and it's a thin book, and I'm like, okay, all right, that's encouraging. This year, I will write so it's like eventually I will read that and do it. So anyway, yeah.
That's excellent. I'm also kind of like tempted to get into this space, but hearing you say that it's impossible to make a living that way, I was like, maybe not.
Well, I just know that very few people do. Like the majority of novelists like also teach or also edit or also take on ghostwriting jobs. It's few and far between. And then you have one bestseller, you got to have another one.
Thank you so much for coming on A Gossip and a Guinness. This has been such a great chat, and I hope to have you on the show again.
Love to do it. This has been fun. Thought about a lot of stuff I haven't thought about in a long time. So it's been awesome. Great to chat.
Thanks, PJ.